Yes, and now we'll start with our questions, and I'll begin with Mr. Nally. I'm interested in the impact increased U.S. LNG has on the natural gas prices in the U.S. I think it's critically important to remain energy independent. We've spoken about that, and we talked about that, and we had an unbelievable find as far as horizontal drilling with the Marcellus, Utica, and my home area of West Virginia, ocean of gas. We found so much more oil and things that we're able to produce that made us energy independent for the first time. So I'm curious to learn from EIA if the data is changing and whether high LNG export prices, because the attraction of the high prices, are we exporting more at the detriment to the American consumer, that we're going to pay a higher price here so that companies that we allowed to export their products can make a higher profit overseas?
Well, thank you.
Hit your mic, sir.
Sorry about that. It's a great question, of course. A lot of attention on LNG exports and natural gas in the U.S.
You can also put that for oil too, because we allowed oil exports too. But I think there's a provision in both of the bills that basically allows the president to put a halt on exportations if it's going to basically damage the consumer market here in America or make them pay, so we pay higher prices.
Right. The U.S. has a enormous resource base of natural gas, and there are tight connections between the U.S. and the international markets. We do show continued exports at record levels, or maximum level of up 50% this year and 17% projected next year with new LNG capacity coming online. So, right now we see that the fundamentals in the U.S. market are probably still primarily at play to, what's going on with the U.S. prices. But clearly, the high prices in Europe and Asia are affecting.
They're attractive to, I understand.
Right.
I understand the market. I'm just saying, do you believe it is basically making the prices in America spike because we're allowing more exports to leave our country and not protecting the American consumer? That, natural gas, coal, oil, all these things, because I've seen the coal markets. I can't believe what I'm seeing today. I've never seen it. But also, as far as in the natural gas too, and gasoline prices at the pump.
Right. Clearly, there's a connection there that we're seeing higher prices. We are undertaking a study. We've modeled the relationship in the past in 2012 and 2014, and we currently have a study underway that we hope to have finished in the spring, looking at these relationships so we better understand sort of the long-term implications.
Mr. Bryce, you have any comments to that?
Well, certainly, sir, when you add more demand and for a domestic supply of anything, whether it's corn or soybeans or LNG, you're going to see higher prices.
I think I think the question very quickly. Would you recommend that we would curtail our exports to take care of the American consumer?
No, sir.
Do you think the American consumer is getting gouged by export, our higher percentage of export?
No, I believe in free markets and free trade, sir. So,
Okay.
I mean, if we're going to limit sales of our oil or our gas, are we going to do the same for corn or soybeans or pork bellies? I mean, where does that stop?
Gotcha. Mr. Gould, give it from the international level, give it to me.
I would concur with what's just been said. The U.S. has been a major beneficiary of open international markets, and I continue to believe that over the medium and long term, that would be the case.
So all three of you are saying that basically by us continuing our exportation policies that we've had, help stabilize the market, international market, and also does not put extra burden on the American consumer? Or do you recognize that we are putting an extra burden on the American consumer?
My response, sir, was we live in a global marketplace.
Gotcha.
And that U.S. LNG exports are helping reduce carbon emissions in other countries, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Mr. Nally?
No, I mean, clearly the prices are higher right now than they have been for a long time. So it's clearly putting, pressure on residents, industry as well at home with the higher prices. We see that. So clearly it's putting a burden on U.S. businesses and homeowners.
And Mr. Gould, if you can tell me on an international basis, do you see any countries that you think are really doing a great job as far as their portfolio of energy and how they produce energy and how they basically distribute energy as far as their country to stabilize and keep it reliable, if you will, dependable, affordable, and reliable? Which country do you think is doing the best job?
So I think there's some interesting analysis that was released yesterday of which countries in Europe. I completely agree that Europe has been at the center of this storm, but there was interesting analysis done of which countries in Europe have seen the highest increase in electricity prices in recent months and which countries had lesser increases in electricity prices. And interestingly, the countries that had the lowest increase in electricity prices over the last few months, it was looking in particular at September, were countries that had invested heavily in renewables in the Nordic states of Europe. The other country that saw a lower than average rise in electricity prices was Poland, and that's despite the carbon prices, and this was due to the relatively high share of coal. The countries, by contrast, that saw the highest increase in gas prices were those that, the highest increase in electricity prices were those that had a large share of natural gas in the electricity mix, and also those that were relatively poorly interconnected with their neighbors. So I think that gives important clues as to the policy measures that have been successful, at least in Europe, in the recent months.
Thank you all very much. And now I'll turn to Senator Barrasso.
Thanks, Mr. Bryce.